Yeah, well, apparently, and nobody's, I think, alleging anything wrong other than maybe not knowing any different. But apparently, we checked on, because we had $200,000 to start this process, less what was to be spent for software, which Charlie Daniels had already done before the first of the year. And in checking about the money, there's 70-some-odd thousand's already been spent, and nobody's met to decide to do that. And so we got to figure out what to do about that. To the extent that it's spent for legitimate Board of Apportionment purposes, then maybe we need to go back and ratify that or something, take official action to approve of that. To the extent that it's something that's not for the Board of Apportionment, then it's more appropriate for the Secretary of State's office, and there might have to be a fund transfer somewhere. But there was a car bought. It's kind of ironic. There's a consulting contract in there, and I don't know what that's for. And then there's been Tim Hutchinson apparently was hired, and I don't know what that's for.
Is that concerning to you?
Well, I don't know what it's for. I mean, I don't know. And obviously nobody's trying to embarrass anybody, and so there wasn't any. And like the Attorney General said, nobody's claiming it was inappropriate action from the standpoint of any bad intent. It just may have been not knowing. So I guess that's where we're at this point. To the extent that this money has been expended by mistake, but for good, legitimate reapportionment purposes, I think it's a question of ratifying it, if that's legally what we need to do. To the extent that it was more appropriate for other activities in the Secretary of State's office and less for the Board of Apportionment, I'm sure a fund transfer from the Secretary of State to the Board of Apportionment, because that $200,000 is all we got, to run from now until June 30th, and then the supplemental dies, and then the regular appropriation can kick in. But so no, I don't foresee it as being a stopper. I think, like the Secretary of State said, he was trying to do right, or what he thought was right, and he didn't have any experience in it. And but the board has to, at least 2 out of the 3 need to vote or have some sort of protocol to spend money.
The expenditures that actually have been made by the Secretary of State's office go all the way back to June of last year. These decisions have actually been being made at the discretion of the Secretary of State's office without a meeting of the Board of Apportionment. So those expenditures are all been made at the discretion of the Secretary of State's office.
You mean in the last decade? I mean, for the last time the apportionment happened?
No, going back all the way to June, software purchases were actually made and whatnot. So these expenditures from the Secretary of State's office, without the prior approval of the Secretary of State's, without the Board of Apportionment, it's just kind of a standard procedure. It's actually been made in the past. Secretary of State's office has actually conducted and kind of driven the boat for the Board of Apportionment as far as making sure that all the support staff and all the stuff that's in place. And you understand that redistricting is not just the state level, but also local and municipal level. So all of these expenditures that actually build up to actually be able to meet deadlines and whatnot have actually been made. And of course, when we come into office, there still hadn't been a Board of Apportionment meeting called, so we just assumed to follow standard process that actually been used in the past, what we could find from notes and whatnot, and just keep moving the process forward in the ways that we could have. So, naturally some expenditures were actually made to kind of make sure that we stayed on task, to make sure that we'd be able to move those areas forward that we could.
There's some questions raised about a consulting contract, Tim Hutchinson. Were those made after you came into office or before?
Yes, Tim Hutchinson was hired as the redistricting coordinator. Apparently today the board actually wants to make that decision together. I don't know if it's actually been made by the whole board in the past or if it's been made by the Secretary of State's office. With discussions that we'd actually had with staff from the prior administration, it looked like that position was at our discretion to hire. So I believe that more than likely, staff that actually came with us from the previous administration knew and felt like that hire for the redistricting coordinator was appropriate. And I think that within all of the guidelines and that the Secretary of State has to follow, I think that we're within all those guidelines. I hope that this is not a political thing that's actually happening right now. I really don't think it is. I think it's maybe just confusion of new players at the board, and I think that really we'll get worked through all of this, and it'll be okay.